Have you ever wondered what wine goes with a certain dish, or been tasked to choose a wine to enjoy with a meal and not know where to start? This is where a little wine and food pairing knowledge can come in handy to give you a general set of not necessary rules, but more like guidelines to get you started. Hi there, I'm Jacqueline for Vero, where we go around the world searching out wild and scarce, hard to find wines to bring to consumers, businesses, and distributors across the US. And while we do love wine, let's face it, we love food too. And areas where the two intersect, heaven. Now, that is to say, we don't necessarily believe that wine and food must always be paired. Really, we think that there is almost no right or wrong here. After all, we all have different palates and experiences, which influences what we like and what we don't like in both food and wine. This is why we consider wine and food pairing both an art and a science. You need to play around in practice to see what works for you and what you like too. So there are different methodologies, theories all around food and wine pairing, but in this series of videos, we are going to focus on one particular methodology, that of ICE, the Association of Italian Sommeliers, which both I and Vero founder Sheila Donahue are a part of. A large part of the ICE theory is based around a chart that helps you to visualize optimal pairings. You can subscribe here on YouTube to be notified when another video showing how that process works is posted. In preparation for that video, we want to go over some key terms and concepts that are integral to understanding the mechanics behind food and wine pairing. A lot of the wine terms that you need for this we have talked about in our wine lingo videos, so I recommend you also give those a watch after this to refresh your memory. And of course, as always, I will have those linked down below so they are nice and easy for you to find. So quickly, these wine terms that you should be familiar with are things like acidity, a fresh or crisp sensation that causes salivation; sweetness, from residual sugars; effervescence, or the bubbles; finish, for how long the flavors last; intensity, how strong the flavors are; tannins, the sandy roughness that red wines will have; softness, which is the roundness or the body, how the wine fills your mouth; sapidity, or minerality; and heat, how the alcohol will cause a warm sensation on the palate. Like I said, we breezed through those quickly, as you can hear more about each of those terms in our wine lingo videos. Now, we're going to spend today a little bit more time going over the food-based counterparts. It's going to be an intersection of these two concepts, the food ones and the wine ones, that allow us to create successful pairings. So let's get on to the food terms. Persistency and aromatic intensity. These two concepts are tied to very similar wine-related concepts. Persistency is the food version of finish in wine. To judge persistency, you want to swallow the food and consider how long do the flavors last. Do they disappear right away or linger on your palate for a while? And aromatic intensity will translate directly to intensity in wine. How much can you sense the flavors in the food? Are they strong, super obvious, or are they subtle and hidden? Succulence. Succulence in food is a sensation of juiciness or mouth-watering. Think how a steak has a lot of natural juices that fill your mouth. But it can also be represented in saliva production that is caused by an overly sour food, or perhaps a food that requires abundant chewing, like a piece of Parmesan cheese. Oiliness and fattiness. These two words are related, yet different. They come from grease or fat that is present in food, but the difference between them is going to be the consistency. Oiliness is a slippery, more liquid sensation, where fattiness is a more creamy, thick, and mouth-coating sensation. Think of the difference between a spoonful of olive oil or a pat of butter. Sweetness and sweet tendency. Again, two related terms, but for vastly different foods. Sweetness is directly related to sugar content, like in a dessert. A sweet tendency, however, is focused on savory foods that have a sweet flavor undertone. So imagine a boiled carrot or a simple white fish. You can think of it as sweetness or added sugars, such as fruits, honey, sugar, or maple syrup. And a sweet tendency is from the natural sugars and starches present in the foods. Bitterness, acidity, and spices. So these three words really are dependent on what recipe you're working with. They can be incredibly intense or maybe not even present at all. They will often work in tandem with terms like persistency and intensity. And the more of bitterness, acidity, and spices there are, the more intense or persistent a food will be. Some examples: bitterness. You can think of dark caramel, super dark chocolate, or artichokes. Acidity or sourness comes from things like lemon juice or vinegars, and spices don't necessarily have to be spicy like cayenne pepper. They can, but it can also be things like strong flavors like curries, mixes, or really strong herbs. So your homework is the next time you have a bite to eat, consider your food. Be mindful about eating. Chew and swallow carefully. Think about the flavors and textures that you are experiencing. How intense is the food? Is it persistent? What about a sweet tendency? Can you recognize that? Start practicing all of these things along with recognizing the wine terms in your wine as you prepare for the next video in this series, where we go more into detail of how to pull these terms together into a generic concept of food and wine pairing. So remember to subscribe here and hit the bell icon to be notified when that video drops. In the meantime, check out the Vero blog where the full Learn the Art and Science of Food and Wine Pairing article is found. This lays out the details of everything we are talking about in this series, and it'll be a great refresher for you before the next ones. And you can sign up for the Vero newsletter as well to be notified when any new articles or content is released. We do a lot of articles around recipes and stuff that have wine pairings involved in them. To get you started on your pairing journey and start practicing, head over to verovino.com. In the Vero shop, you can find a selection of hard-to-find small production wines, and on the blog, a selection of great recipes with dedicated wine pairings, all available in the Vero shop for purchase that can get you practicing and learning these concepts in the real world. So thank you for joining me today. Let us know in the comments below how your experience with food is changing as you consider all of these new terms and topics. And if you liked this video, please leave a like below and subscribe. In the meantime, why don't you check out these videos on cheese pairings for a sneak peek into what our next food and wine pairing video is going to cover. I'll see you in those videos. Bye.